Thank you so much, James, and thanks for the invitation. I feel being a graphic designer, one of the biggest compliments you can get is that people are actually interested in your work and are listening along. So thank you. That means a lot. It's a bit weird being in the room all by myself now. It's all silent. Yeah. Okay. My name is Pau Poulsen, as you said, and I'm a graphic designer. I'm born and raised in Copenhagen here in Denmark, and I'm 30 years old. So I just reached the big 30 here this summer. I saw a lot of your talks, and there was a lot of different approaches to kind of explain your childhood, as you asked me to. And I was thinking a lot about this assignment, and it was quite hard because I found the old drawings and the childhood picture and everything. But I realized during my kind of research on myself that most of my life is spent in this small map here, which is like 500 meters this way and 400 meters in that way. And that is in an area called Vesterbro in the center of Copenhagen. And as I kind of try to map out here, the first part of my life is spent on this street. I lived there for 6 years. I was born on this street. And then we moved after 6 years, 400 meters to another apartment close by. Then I started school down here, 300 meters away. I went to table tennis courses in also just 300 meters away. I actually had another job up here as well, and then now I work 400 meters away from where my parents are living and my siblings as well. So so even though it's in Copenhagen and it's not compared to London, it's a small city, but in Denmark it's the biggest city, and even though it's just like this capital, it felt like a local community growing up here. A lot of familiar faces when I walk around. I took a stroll today around. You always meet someone from your childhood in some way. So sort of a local village. Yeah. Just to briefly kind of try to explain my career and my education. I started at something called Krabbesholm, which is a preparatory school for applying for bachelor programs. So you move to Jutland for 6 months, and then you just stay there and do graphic design all the time. And you live there with 100 other people who have the same interest. And it's like 6 different courses, I think, between architecture and art and design and graphic design. So you also kind of get the taste of other fields of work, and you try to do some ceramics and croquis drawings and all these more like classical yeah, exercises. And when you live there, you're far away from everything. So it's like this bubble you go into, and then you just do the work all day, and you drink a bit as well and have fun and just be young with your profession there. So that was kind of my first like real kickstart to graphic design. Through Krabbesholm, I started as a professional bachelor here in Copenhagen, called at the Danish School of Media and Journalism. They have this very software-oriented practical approach to graphic design, and they have the 3-year course. 2 years into that program, I got very tired of this very practical approach, so I applied for Royal Academy of Art in The Hague. They have a typography based, and I call it a mix between political design and typography. So it's the complete opposite of what I learned at the Danish School of Media and Journalism, where we only work with clients and real briefs almost, or like not real brief, like fictitious briefs, but realistic briefs you could get afterwards in the commercial work. But at KBK, you only did self-initiated projects alongside your tutors, and you had this. I was introduced to this term of critical thinking and political design. After that exchange, I started as an intern at Spassky Fischer in Paris for a few months. where that yeah, that's something completely different from the critical thinking design. That's very stylistic and yeah, like dogmatic design. It's mostly white and black and white posters with the Neue Haas. So very interesting to try that approach where you really just geek out on the aesthetics and the layout. Afterwards, I went to Wrong Studio as an intern here in Copenhagen, who also have the cultural approach and do a lot of museums, local museums. And I did my bachelor's. I finished my bachelor's there as well, and was a bit of a hang around. And in the end said you need a job, Pau, and then they worked at something called E-Types. Both of them. That's actually where they met. And then they kind of sent me to E-Types through their contact there. And E-Types was amazing, just taking in like I was completely unexperienced and I never done a visual identity before. And I got a job at their identity department, which was a bit crazy. But they must have seen some potential or and E-Types is we just talked about it, James. It's one of the biggest Danish design companies, graphic design companies with approximately 50 people plus minus. And E-Types have it shifts a bit. They have something called Playtype, which is associated, and Playtype does type design and bespoke, both retail and bespoke type. We have a digital department, we have a production department, and my former department and current again, we'll get to that. Does the identity jobs. Meanwhile, experience this whole new corporate world. I needed some, I think, creative freedom in a way with all the briefs and all the different people agreeing on a color or agreeing on a concept. I needed some like a breathing space creatively. So I co-founded something called Amulet, which is a publishing house, and with two of my good friends, Jakob and Emil. And they have a background in literature, so because I'm not that well read, uh, and they approached me, and for me it was a great opportunity to kind of um, how can I say it, create this atmosphere, create this room for myself to explore new ways of doing, in this case, books. After 2 years, 3 years, sorry, at E-Types, I started as a freelance designer, and I've been doing that for approximately 2.5 years now, and that's a lot of the project you're going to see today. And just 3 weeks ago, I rejoined E-Types now as a creative director. So a bit of a new role, but still executing creative director. So I still do some of the design myself. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna dive into some work now. No, sorry, I had this. And I just briefly wanted to talk a little bit about this balance between cultural jobs and commercial interests. So in my career, as you could hear before, I almost had this idea of going in the opposite direction for where I was before. So I kind of switched all the time, and I still have a bit of tendency to do that. I think so. Kind of going from weighing the commercial jobs a bit more into weighing the cultural jobs a bit more. Sometimes it feels like both of them are going in the wrong direction, but in the beginning it was this dilemma in my head, but now I kind of converted it into more like a day-to-day thing. Like, am I, do I want to go here today or do I want to go here today? And also, I try to kind of make them feed each other because I kind of realized that I can't do without any of them. And I find both fields of work interesting. Yeah, just briefly wanted to show a bit of work from school. Um, I started doing a lot of experiment with typography, the classic downloading all the trials from the website and trying to make a fictitious poster. This is a we There was a school assignment we had to do article about legibility, so I found a very unlegible type. Here I did my own small display type. This is a text, this is a Mark Twain quote about interruption. So I did this interrupted. During my school time, I tried to apply humor to my work as well, which is some of the hardest you can do, at least in my opinion. Here is 200 pictures of Hugh Grant and one picture of my dad. This is a poster I made for my mom, who loves Hugh Grant. And I actually lost the file, so this is the only picture I got of it. And then the original poster, so it's a one edition poster, and it's hanging above my parents' bed. I don't. He gets lost with me. I think he's somewhere here. Yeah, here. That's my dad. This is a project I did at the KVK, where I tried to index Danish subculture by screenshotting and like scraping a Danish social media, and then using all the scraped websites to recreate a Danish a map of Denmark. And then I printed it on some fabric. Yeah, so that's a bit of my school. Now I want to show a bit of my more commercial projects from E-Types. Heartbeats was one of my very first identity projects actually, and the pitch was to kind of reposition this media company called Heartbeats, which originated from radio and now wanted to be more a mixed culture media company, and was quite big on the whole podcast wave in the beginning. They had their founder, it's called Lee Gammeltoft, and she was this very cool DJ. So I kind of wanted to bring in a bit of that house or house music and these beats. So I created this beat system. It's very flexible boxes you can put on top of images and across a lot of there's a big video. I was a bit inspired by the MTV snippets, where I do something like short. Maybe it doesn't make sense, but it's like just this brief little funny edit. And the whole density was so black and white and boxes. I thought it was quite fun to use these a bit like school-ish or lo-fi music things. There you have the DJ scratching. So yeah, this very modular system of beats you could put on top of a lot of different elements. Again, you can probably see throughout this presentation, I love working with boxes and squares. This is a concept I did for the biggest Danish energy company called Andel Energi. And this was a 3-year process of naming and a lot of different companies and information like brand architecture, information architecture, and advertising companies as well. And this is how one of the companies ended up. I made this generator where you could upload images and then it would interpret them in their branding colors. So everyone from the company could upload a picture of themselves and they would get this unique graphic of themselves. And they would use it throughout communication as well and on the app. And this is some work for a Danish motion tracking company. They liberated motion tracking in a way. Motion tracking was beforehand just used by the like massive Hollywood productions like Lord of the Rings. I think most people watch the Lord of the Rings motion tracking comedy where people have this black suit on and the white dots, and then you could kind of track that afterwards. But Rokoko invented this suit where you have gyroscopes and like a lot of the technology from smartphones, so you could just get like this visual representation of your body movement afterwards inside of Blender or Cinema 4D. And the pitch from them was to um, they had this black and white universe before, and it looked very clean, and they wanted to be a bit more in eyesight with their audience. They have a lot of creators in their audience. So I made the logo into this character called Roko, who uses their motion tracking software. So like a avatar logo almost, and a lot of different tracking ideas across the whole identity. And then also the opportunity to create memes and create engaging communication. So this is Rokoko destroying expensive studio software. I made a project called for a company called Jiaju in Seoul, and they were it's owned by this massive company called Shinsegae, who owns a lot of the department stores and is also co-owned by Samsung. And I created this system based on the Korean flag and the former logo, a dynamic box, if you will. You could put across a lot of different materials as well. Yeah. So that was a little bit of my E-types work. And then during my E-types first E-types period, as I said before, I wanted to create something. I wanted to create a new creative space for myself. So it was perfect when Jakob and Emil approached me for this. And we have this mantra. I try to translate it. It's a bit hard to English, but I wrote, "We fight for literature that dares to be angry, challenged, vulnerable, and believes in beauty." And I thought it was a quite beautiful sentence they wrote. So that was also the kind of inspiration for my design work throughout Amulet. Um, yeah, and it was, as I said, it was this sort of reaction to make things more free and simple. So when you're working on a 3-year identity rebranding, you can kind of sometimes feel like a lot of the decisions get a bit stuck, or things goes a bit slow. And I wanted something where I could just one day feel like doing something and then just push the button and print it. And that's what I've been doing with Amulet ever since. The whole visual concept for Amulet is not to have a visual concept. Um, so all of the books uses different formats. There's no typeface across. There's no logo for Amulet. I just when I start working on a new project, a new book, or a website for Amulet or something, it's more or less what I feel like doing at the point of time designing it. This is the first magazine we did. We've so far done 3 magazines, and we call them magazines. There's not, I don't know if there's an English word for it. It's a very specific genre in Denmark where you collect a lot of different literature, like snips of literature. So it could be a short text from a fiction or something, or an essay or a manuscript or something, and then you collect it into this one big piece. And the first magazine we did, we call them magazines to make it a bit easier to understand what it is, but literature magazines. And the first edition had, I think, approximately 20 texts in various formats. And to manifest my complete freedom now, I did a blank cover, so nothing on there, which is unheard of in the literature world, where you always have the author and the book title and the publishing house and everything, and the barcode on the front page. I worked with Gamong. I set up this very, very strict system for myself, which would break sometimes, and then I had to be creative. So the tension or the interesting part in this book actually happens when the rules doesn't fit anymore. So when there's some sort of letter too large for the height, I had to push things around, and that was the idea of the grid of the book. This is just a spread I really enjoy with no breaks. Just for the promotion, I did a poster, and that's a quite a good example of how it works. My process with Amulet, because I wanted to do something a bit new every time. This was related to the book, so I did it in the same Pantone color, but I was just sitting around a night after working on identities all day, and then I was like, what the hell am I going to do for this poster? And then I had the whole book in InDesign open, and I just copied the whole book and then put onto the poster. And then I zoomed out on the InDesign, and they do these. I think it's called the Greek lettering, where it just shows the contour of the sentence and not the actual letters. And I really like the concept of that, so I redid it and draw the whole book up. So the poster is kind of an index of how the different texts look and the layout of the book, but it's unreadable. Yeah, and you can see in the end there's a manuscript here, so you can see the format there, and you have some sections from with more classical text, and you have some poems in there, and yeah. The first Amulet magazine was really well received and is sold out now. But some critics of it in the Danish press were saying it was a bit highbrow and unaccessible because there was no explanation of the book. It was just one large letter like index and then all the text. And I put some weird dog faces in there as well, and people were wondering what everything meant, and they wanted a bit more explanation of everything. So I've thought as a kind of reaction to that, I wanted to do something super accessible, and also to make a bit fun of it or do it like a childish magazine. So I found these dot-to-dot drawings, and the cover is the number two dot-to-dot. You can draw yourself, and I made this pencil alongside with the book. I don't have it here actually, but the index is also like a Chinese eating note where you cross off what you want to eat, like the pieces of sushi and dishes on something, so you could cross off the text you read. In the end of the book, I had a lot of friends like graphic designers and artists and people doing these point-to-point drawings. Or they just did a drawing and I did all the points on 23 of these drawings, and yeah, that was a tough time. Yeah, we made the pencils. We made a very accessible barcode. So this is actually the barcode for the book, who takes out the entire back cover. I don't actually know if it works. I think you'd be very far away with the scanner. On Amulet, we use this dog face, like this German Shepherd, quite a lot on different materials. And I did a drawing of a German Shepherd in a jungle, and then I made it into a point-to-point drawing on a huge poster. And it's printed so you have kind of the solution on the back and then the point-to-point drawings on the front. And when you take it up against this, like the sun or against some light, you can see the solution for this in the end. And some people actually did it. It's not just. And a lot of kids started drawing on this as well. So it kind of it ended where it was supposed to, with the accessibility. For this publication, we also did a pop-up at a store in my local neighborhood, actually also on the map I showed in the beginning. And then I printed all the different drawings, the 23 drawings from the back on large sheets of paper so people could solve them. And we had beers, and this is our third magazine and the latest in this series. I was a bit stuck with the ideas in this period, so I just started doing something else, and I did a typeface called Trille, which I just released for free. Actually, you can find it on my Instagram, I guess, and it's just this goofy variable font, which is quite unreadable. and I wanted to use it for this project. This says magazine 3 and it says amulet in the back. It splits. It's almost like 50% of people can read it and the other half can't. And the typeface in the is also used to kind of introduce the authors. But the actual text is just in the Helvetica, not this Trille font. Yeah. Then this is another project and also a collection of texts, or it became a collection of texts. You could almost say the two others, Anna Rieder and Sissel Wendel, approached us with this activistic project. They wrote some poems on and some good advice for like oriented towards the doctors and the psychiatrists from the Danish psychiatry system. And they had this idea of exhibiting them at the psychiatrists. So, which is almost like a reverse communication because I don't know if you have this in London or, but you have all these folders when you're sitting at the doctor or at the psychiatrist. So we made all these folders and they are on the text on there is directly headed towards the doctors and the psychiatrists. And the patients can read them as well, obviously. This is the covers of the three folders. This is on the left is directly approach to doctors, and it's called 10 good advice for the doctors. So here you have a list of advice for doctors to deal with patients. And this project went so well that they approached us again with the idea of doing sort of a magazine in the same format as the magazine I just showed you, but this time it should just all of the text should concern or be about the psychiatry and psychiatric problems. So a lot of very vulnerable and beautiful text around that topic. And then I had to come up with a new idea, obviously. In Denmark, we have these journal colors, this colored paper on journals, which is these three colors. Um, and I thought it was nice to kind of have a reference from the system, but make it beautiful. So the idea was to buy sheets of paper and then randomize it. So you're familiar with doing book printing, probably, but when you have these big sheets, you kind of distribute all the pages on the book on top of them. But if you randomize them, each book will be unique because the numbers of pages don't add up. I have a picture. This is the front cover, similar to the folders, but the kind of the whole the book is these colors randomized, so each book is unique. Here I made a book of the back to show the difference between this and ordinary books. Here's the just a slow motion of feeling when reading it. Yeah, and this book went very well, but the print cost was way higher than the actual income from selling the book, so I had to rethink the concept. And now it's still out there, but now the covers are random, so you don't know what color you'll get when you buy it from online or in the store. This was from the magazine 3, the kind of promotion of the magazine, the orange magazine 3. We had a small party there as well. You can see the unlegible font. We got this beautiful old house and we put orange foil and orange light in there, so it kind of lit up at night. Yeah, that was a bit about Amulet. I think I'm doing okay on time. I want to show some freelance projects I worked on during the past 2 years. This is a project for an exhibition called Ukurant. And Ukurant calls in completely new design team each year to promote the exhibition. Uh, yeah, a yearly exhibition during the Danish 3 days of design, and they showcase a variety of design objects. And I was alongside for the whole also naming process, and they wanted to do something with the transparency and price and material transparency, and I kind of converted that into the idea of wrapping and unwrapping. And I worked on this for, it was only exhibited for 3 days, but I worked on it for half a year almost, doing animations all year, all like the months up to the exhibition, promoting the open call they have, promoting the designers, and again just this folding system for me to experiment with animations. I'm not really schooled in animations. I just try my best, and I try to incorporate some of the method I have from identity development and print design, and some of the methodology into that practice. And yeah, I think it's really fun to do animations, even though it's not my main thing. Yeah, just a lot of different explorations on folding paper. After the promotion of the exhibition for yeah, these months, as I said, I had to reinvent my concept because I couldn't animate fold on the actual posters, and so I kind of tried to do a more material approach to it, writing across corners, sort of wrapping the, this is the intro to the front curb to the exhibition, or wrapping some foil inside the exhibition across a small step, which was also practical because otherwise people were falling off the step. So a bit of text helped. Just working with the different materials. This is for like an A sign. And then I did the magazine, exhibition magazine on cardboard to feel this, to have this, yeah, wrapping feel. And the same typographic system from the animations. This is a concept I did for exhibition here in Copenhagen called Office Overload, which was this office in like corporate office, regular corporate office, who does funding for the cultural world, who approach a group of curators called Pro Tempo Art. And Pro Tempo Art had this idea of filling out the office space with art during a year. So the first day there was maybe one or two art pieces, and then during the time of the year they would fill out the space more and more and more with art. So that was also the inspiration for the design, where I tried to overload it with information. I had this outline text system where I played around with the writing the names and showcasing the art in all these different systems. Very flexible system. A lot of different. Here's a lot of collection of a lot of the Instagram posts I did. This is some of the folders for the exhibition. And this was from the final party. So here you see all the artists exhibited. This is another exhibition called In Transit, which was a collection of different programs from the Danish Royal Academy exhibited in this huge warehouse. And the fun thing was it was an actual warehouse, so the guys that rented it from said that they could call anytime during the span of the exhibition and get a container. So there was in a way the inspiration for the exhibition as well, where I try to do this system of barcodes transferring around and as a graphic element, and also a representation of the students who are about to finish their education and going on in transit, going out in the world. There's another exhibition called 360. It was called 360 because they had both process and the actual works. It was a lot of design works, and they had these 360 round tables where all of the different material was exhibited. I created this three-dimensional space in After Effects and tweaked images and process images and the text sometimes along it. And this is all the exhibiting designers in a 15-second loop. There was a lot of more than 50 designers. When you have so big exhibitions, it's really hard to get all of the names listed. So I thought it was a nice small mention of everybody. This is a clothing brand I did for a friend of mine. She does dead stock leather clothing. Went for this 90s dark, 90s zero-ish design approach for this. And then this is another exhibition I did, was called, it was a lot of interactive pieces called all around the topic of being together, and kind of wanted to try to make art more accessible in Copenhagen for people with disabilities. So I took this tracking effect from After Effects, which was a nice metaphor for being together or being separate. And you can create a lot of different compositions with that. You could also put in text, and it will kind of ruin your composition a bit, but create something new. Yeah, and as you can see throughout these exhibition things, I really like to come up with a simple concept, and then where it open up idea for me to work with, and then just work within the system and keep working and trying to create new expressions. Yeah. So you asked me what did I learn, um, which is a really hard question. I don't feel like I'm done with my career as well. So this is just an intermediate. What did I learn, or like a status? I think what I learned so far is that this way of looking at the design is maybe not the best way. Um, they sort of feed each other in a way, and if they can also help each other out and make you strive as a designer actually. And a lot of the stuff I've done for cultural clients give me good idea in the commercial world, and the other way around. So when it really works and you're in the good zone, or what you can say, they actually feed each other and create better ideas in different in the both two different aspects of design.